Well, hello, DG Lovelies. This is Nisha M, your geek mom, coming to you from San Diego Comic Con, and we are here at the Legion M lounge, basically
at TCL Chinese Theater.
Chinese Theater, which I understand this is the inauguration.
Yeah, the Chinese Theater is still being renovated, but we've opened it up for Comic Con, and we have a lounge here, and it's super exciting. We're 5 blocks away from the convention center.
Right down the road, right there. So, as always, I'm bringing you another amazing episode of My Geek Universe, where we explore the journey to embracing your inner geek and expressing that in your everyday life with the wonderful David Baxter, who is the Vice President of Development for Legion M, as well as a well-known cosplayer with the larger-than-life cosplay, correct?
I'm 6'8", perfect name for it. And don't mind this funky music in the background, but we can't turn it off, so we're just going to groove with it.
We're just going to dance. Let's go. We just realized we're both New Yorkers, and ultimately, so you know, we go with the flow. Yo. We probably grew up in the same groove too, so we got the same language. Oh, we are going to bore you kids. That language. We were just already having a fabulous discussion. I think that David also has a bachelor's degree in psychology, and you have a strong family tie with psychiatry and psychology as well.
Yes, we believe in mental health, the importance of mental health care.
And self-care, which we were both trying to practice as we were about to come on the show. So, I always like to start with this. First, because you just have a largesse in terms of how you have learned to incorporate your fandom into your existence as part of your DNA structure.
Very much so.
Tell me a little bit about what was the journey like. So let's start with, what was the largest and the most, this is a big question, the most influential fandoms do you think that actually helped you to be able to connect to who you are?
Well, that's a big question. I'm an older cosplayer. I'm 55 years old. And so for me, I was born in 1964, and I was 13 years old when Star Wars came out. And it was a revelation to me. And I liked other fandoms. I was really into Planet of the Apes.
I know, I love it so much.
And I also love the books by J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. I'm a serious nerd. But what was interesting was that in my senior year, Return of the Jedi came out. And I always wanted to have a Darth Vader costume. And my neighbor had a Darth Vader helmet. And I'm 6'8", so I'm this hulking presence. I took my graduation gown, our garbage can lid, I made a cape, put the helmet on, went to see Return of the Jedi. There were probably, 300 people in line. I stepped out of the car, and everybody just screamed. And I knew what it was to be a celebrity for a moment. And, at the end of the day, I think everybody wants to feel that they're there, that they matter, that there's something special about them. And growing up being very tall and being very self-conscious, for many years I wanted to blend in, and I could not blend in. It wasn't out in the cards for me. So I decided to reverse that whole idea and lean into my larger-than-life self. And I was very, very shy, and I suddenly found that there's no point to it. People would come up to me and speak to me and ask me how tall I was, and before I would not want to engage. Then I engaged. But wearing that costume,
it changes the whole
everything.
The mentality of who you are.
Oh, it changes your neurons.
That's exactly what it was. So you and I had this amazing discussion a few moments ago about how embracing your inner geek, like everyone understands, they know me as the geek mom and the science nerd. I feel very strongly that embracing your geek and understanding your fandom passions and embracing them or applying them to your life from very early helps you to really acculturate and identify positively.
What it also does, and in a way that I think it helps acculturate, is when you are stepping into this character that you admire. It's not just about wearing a costume. In fact, it's so much more about just finding what that character is. When you're able to step out of your own self, then you can actually look at yourself in an objective way.
Yes.
You know, for me, Darth Vader, you know, he was this sort of fearsome presence. And I remember when I was very young, my father would be, never use your height to intimidate somebody else. And the problem, of course, you know, with statements like this is, in a way, it's like taking a piece of me. It's not that I necessarily, you know, would intimidate someone, but I'm tall and I must embrace that.
So it by saying that, it imposed almost a negator or a negative
narrative.
A negative narrative to your height. So therefore, you own that negative narrative. So through cosplay, you were able to disengage and disconnect.
Not just disengage, but be more myself. So when I wore the Darth Vader, when that helmet went on, David sort of ceased to be. But in so doing, I became more me.
Exactly. Oh my God, that's so beautiful.
Well, it's cool how masks can do that. You know, there's a mythology around the power of masks and putting something on.
Yeah.
It goes back to the hangman's noose. By pulling that hood over their head, they ceased to be that person. They were an agent of that government.
Of whatever that philosophy was. And I think that let's look back at that now that you said that, because that's back to the social strata and the culture we were talking about a few moments ago. Then what is the influence of your culture? Because we're both from different backgrounds, right? I'm from an Asian, Indian background, and you have the Polish,
Russian, Jewish
background.
Polish
background. And how do you think that plays into that self-identity?
Well, look, any kind of immigrant culture, when you're leaving a culture and you're going to a place, you know, my grandparents were first generation. You know, their kids grew up here. I'm the third generation, and you know, I think it's the wonderfulness of diversity. It's by bringing these different ideas and mixing them all together. It's what makes, you know, America unique. I mean, if there are social strata, so I spent a year living in Italy, and you know, I realized that there were people, literally because of their background, they had a very limited sort of sense of what they could be.
That's correct.
We are incredibly lucky to be in America.
We have a wide berth.
Yeah, even in this, you know, very divisive environment right now, we still have the ability to be ourselves and, you know, and voice our opinions. It's a great place to be able to do that.
No, it really is. I mean, I've been here since I was 3 years of age, and it took me, the same as you, it took me a long time to be able to figure out where my place was in this place.
Sure.
Because I have 5 different cultures coming at me and telling me, well, you should be this person. So that narrative was something that I was wearing it. We wear it kind of like a cloak or a shadow over ourselves. So how do you think, or how would you recommend that someone who is, you know, dealing with the same shadow part of themselves, how would you recommend they come out of that, or what do you see as a good path for them?
You have to find those areas that you care about. You have to think, you know, everybody goes through life, you know, you see a movie, you read a book, you have a particular experience that you relate to or that you want to learn more about. My advice would be, don't ignore those impulses. Think about what has affected you in a very positive way, and then move towards it. You know, if you are thinking about doing cosplay is costume play. So you put a costume on. Yeah, and I think everybody should try it at least once.
At least one time.
Even if you have a fear of doing things publicly, Comic Cons, pop culture conventions are one of the few places where you don't have the same kind of judgment that you do on the internet. You know, where people can safely criticize you from afar. I think so much of acceptance is about the energy that we put out. You tend to find if you are excited and into a character, people will be right back. I mean, this morning I was dressed up as Gandalf the Grey, and I was walking across the street, and there was a street person, a person who was directing traffic, and he immediately came up to me, and it's like, "You shall not pass." And I said, "No, you shall not pass." And we had fun, and we took a picture, and it was great.
Balrog!
Yeah.
I actually have Gandalf and Balrog in the book that I told you that we wrote.
Very cool.
Because of the story. Okay, so as Gandalf is a mayor. He's one of the angels.
He's an angels of J.R. Tolkien's cosmos.
So basically, he has also in the back of his mind a constant fear or something that is as an inhibition, and that's called the Balrog. So for us, what you're talking about is being able to remove those inhibitors.
Correct.
And then by embracing these fandom passions, like we talk about, that we're able to slowly, peel those away.
Yeah, it takes time. Look, I started cosplaying before that term existed. I was the first person in Southern California to have a movie-accurate Darth Vader costume, and I was the same height as the original actor. And, I started going to hospitals for kids, who couldn't go out during Halloween to deliver candy. And then I started going to City of Hope to meet with cancer patients. The point of it was I got a huge amount out of being able to portray a character for people who I know loved it. And that's the greatest gift. If the greatest gift that one person, I believe, can give to somebody else is a belief in that person's potential. That great teachers do this.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you don't even know your own potential. It's staring you in the face, but because of those cloaks that you put over yourself, you have a hard time with.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is incredible. I love when people come on and everything that's inside of my heart, that someone says the same thing. That they say it and it feels like I have a credible thought, that you're validating everything.
Well, that's so interesting is the fact that you have a voice in you that would even think to invalidate it. We are...
That's my inhibitor. See, it sits in the back, and I'm okay with saying it because it's been part of
me. Oh, look, I'm the same way. There's always a sense in whatever your job is. I don't believe that we all have fears. We all have voices. You have to find ways to quiet them. The most important thing is you have to take care of yourself. And the best way to do that is by doing joyous things. And cosplay is one of the most joyous things that you can do.
That is literally the foundation of the book that I told you that we're debuting here at San Diego Comic-Con, is Embracing Your Inner Geek, a self-care workbook. It's about exactly what we're discussing today.
A great way to do it.
We created an entire series of worksheets, and we talk people through this discussion that we're having here. Because you and I can have it because we're a little older, and I'm 53, by the way. So I was around
looking good
when Star Wars
well
opened.
Preserved. See, I'm like totally white-haired. This is all Hollywood magic.
All lies, baby.
Hollywood magic.
So I understand what you're saying. Was your family very supportive of you as you worked through this journey of trying to figure out who you were and finding your identity? Or did it happen later in life?
It really, I didn't really get into, sort of dressing up as part of my job until reasonably late in life. Halloween, my parents, I think, they weren't not supportive. They just sort of thought it was curious because it wasn't part of their experience. They didn't understand that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But I think they understood on some level that I really enjoyed certain fandoms. In particular, what's really interesting is that when I was a teenager, the game Dungeons & Dragons had just come out. And I was one of the early adopters of the game. I became...
Were you a DM?
I was a DM, but I was a player, and I was a competitive player. I would win at competitions like Gen Con, and for me, Dungeons & Dragons was a way to role play, and you could be somebody else. And now it's come back. It's like one of the most. It is the most popular role playing game on the planet.
It absolutely is. We're huge fans of, for instance, Critical Role Team.
They're all my friends, Matt Mercer, and I love them all. They are great people.
I'm gonna weep tears right now.
Oh, stop it.
I love them so much. We met Marisha last year and Taliesin and the group over at New York Comic Con, as a matter of fact. And they embraced very much the message that we have.
I remember their talk that they had on stage. It was at Sci-Fi. It was great. Yeah, I mean, look, these are actors and, who decided to take this geeky game they loved and put it up on YouTube. I couldn't believe it. I didn't think anybody would want to watch anybody play D&D, but that's because when I was a kid, nobody wanted to look at. We were nerds.
It was a very different sociocultural dynamic, and the norm for us was completely different for people in their 50s. And slowly, I will say, because you and I are age cohorts here, do you feel like what foundation do you think we laid to be able to remove those layers of inhibition?
I have some interesting things to say on this subject. So, a lot of the people who grew up during that time went on to become producers and writers. Being a dungeon master is essentially being a writer. And so what's happened is it's taken a long time, but the people who were impacted by that game are now people who impact culture in general. This revitalization is a different subject, and I think that has a lot to do with a reaction to the digital world that enveloped us, and there's a desire for analog experiences. There's a desire for people to sit face to face and have shared communal experiences. I got pulled back into it by a dungeon master named Satine Phoenix.
I know Satine Phoenix.
So Satine is wonderful, and
she has a panel on Saturday night.
Yes.
Cannot wait.
She's a great friend. She has a new show that's being developed called Destination Fantastic, which I'm buddies with everybody there and have been helping them develop that. And hopefully Legion M will get involved.
Tell him you know a girl. Tell him you know a girl.
Okay, I'll tell him. I'll tell her.
Oh, I am a super fan of that.
Awesome. Anyway, sorry. but like Cosplay, Dungeons & Dragons, was one of these seminal games that enabled people to work out things that they couldn't sort of safely do in any other way.
Absolutely. I think that, so let's bring that back again to the dynamic from our age. We're talking about role-playing here. With the era we were growing up in the 70s, what was happening is...
there was a total loss of faith in our own government. It was an awakening.
What happened, but then we were allowed to start, adopting our own personalities and our own understanding of what we would like to do, what our own path would be, our own journey.
Sure, it's a different one. Every generation faces different things. My son is 10 years old. I can't imagine the world that he's going to be in his 20s and 30s. Yeah. I cannot imagine it.
Well, I have a 26 and a 29-year-old child, and I thankfully they're very supportive of this very geeky nerd mom. So
my son's pretty tolerant.
Oh, it's different. I think that if we get the opportunity to do things like this, where we're bridging those gaps, that we're going to be able to create a much stronger, more fluid dynamic narrative between us and all of the generations that have been before us and after us. So in recommendation, Legion M, I feel, is one of the structures that were created, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it gives fans a validity to communicate and to commune. And I feel like that's why I embraced Legion M so much, and one of my fandoms.
I'm very happy that you did.
And that I'm now part of the family, because I believe that that's what it is. I can say I'm family. Do you think?
And that's what changes the world. You know, when you have a group of people who care about each other and care about the stories that are told and that they
Correct.
inhabit, you can't stop that. It's very, 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 very hard when everybody, wants to go down in a certain direction to stop that. If there's
Yes.
joy and happiness and fun. And we believe, good fun can be good business.
So I have an entire piece of literature I wrote on the value of play, and everything we're talking about is disconnecting from the bad stuff is through the art of play.
Yep. Don't forget to play.
Don't forget to play, people. So tell me a little bit about what's going on with Legion M and what you're doing there.
Oh, sure. So very simply, I'm Vice President of Development. So it's my job to analyze material that we are considering turning into television, movies, virtual reality. And I'm a writer in the Writers Guild, so I'm very comfortable doing this. I've written comic books.
So much to learn. Okay.
Well, what's so much fun is I've literally created a job. I was the first hire at the company, and I had actually met the founders prior to the company founding. And the thing that I did to relax in my world prior to this was to go to these conventions as a fan. And what I did is I found a way to turn that love and passion into a job. So, I mean, I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I've got people I respect, and I admire and to work with. And look, I'm dressed as Jim Hopper from Stranger Things. There we go, Hawkins Police. Where else could I do this? I get to continue to play and be a kid, and that's what we need. That's how we connect to our fans.
So, what would be the message that you would give to a person who is having a difficult time understanding how to connect to others or don't know how to remove those inhibitors? What would be if you had one or two things that you would give them as advice or to help them?
Look, if you're not connecting with other people, find out the things that you do connect with. If that's a book, then find the people who love that thing that you love. That is the simplest, most direct way to connect to others. They say falling in love requires two things: proximity over time. It's the same thing with people, with any kind of relationship, is you have to have things in common that keep you in the same area, and you just need to be there long enough for people to trust that what you're saying is you're coming from your heart.
It's coming from your heart. Oh my gosh. This fills me with so much verklempt, and she knows this,
Oh, don't get verklempt.
So I come from it's not oppressive, but it's a very different dynamic as an Indian woman. So what I do is not something that is in the least common. So
no, it's not.
Not at all. Not for my culture. Not for my.
No, I
my
mean
people.
your relatives come from a caste system, which is one of the most inflexible, toughest strata to get out of.
But thank God the family allowed me growing up to embrace any fandom I wanted to, because it didn't occur to them not to let me do that. But it took, once they realized I was doing this, they've been like, okay, could you keep telling me what you're doing again?
Oh, my father he still does that.
What is it you're doing?
Still does that.
But it's okay. I also realized that was a way for me to self-analyze and to and my continuum.
And they have to, I'm sure they sense the pleasure that you derive from these fandoms. And that's the key. Look, when you want to understand your parents, they need to see you doing the thing that you love to do. It is so hard in the face of joy to throw negative energy at that. It's just, some people do it. There are some people who are, that's their thing, but
that's okay. They don't need to be in your life.
No.
And if they are, fine, you can disconnect from that. So tell me how we can find you, and then also the cosplay information.
Yes, so if you want to find out more about the world's first fan-owned entertainment company, go to www.legionm. It's an M actually with a bar over it, and that stands for the Roman numeral million. So the idea is we want to get 1 million investors. And what I say by that is 1 million people who own our company, so that when we make films, those are their films. And we'll have 1 million people to show up on that first day. No other company in the world has it, if we can pull those people together. And then from a cosplay standpoint, I'm at Larger Than Life Cosplay, which you can find on Facebook, or LTL Cosplay on Instagram. Please, by all means, come and see all the different costumes and characters I portray.
I'm so excited for this. Okay, everyone, David and I could just keep talking if we had the opportunity, but I do know with us being here at San Diego Comic-Con, he has a lot of work going on.
Lots of busy things.
You have a lot of screenings that I'm going to be taking part in.
Oh, and I have a body positivity panel tonight at 9 p.m. at the Convention Center.
It's actually on my list, so we should be there.
It'll be hosted by Ivy Doom Kitty, who's an amazing cosplayer.
Love her.
And we are going to talk about cosplaying no matter what your age, size, race, creed, anything.
That's
it's just about play.
We just are. Remember, we don't define ourselves by labels. We just are. Believe in who you are. Love yourself. Love your environment. Trust in yourself and allow yourself to experience as much as you can, as long as it's joyful and it causes no harm. Please go out there and keep trying. So this is Nisha, I'm your Geek Mom, aka Nisha T. Molchan, coming to you from Diversely Geek. And if you're here at San Diego Comic-Con this weekend, please find us at our workshop tomorrow, where we're debuting our first workbook that literally follows this conversation. It's Embracing Your Inner Geek, a self-care workshop, which is going to be at the one of the community offerings at Barrio House. And then we have a panel on Sunday, also at Barrio House, which is Representation in Media, Changing the Narrative. Why aren't you on that panel?
Invite me.
Next time. But Terry Luroff, your COO, is actually on that panel.
Oh, well, that's in your set.
I know.
In your set. And come to our lounge if you can. We're at Theater Box on 5th and G. All you got to do is sign up for Legion M. It doesn't cost anything.
Through Eventbrite, guys. You can find them.
You can find us.
I highly recommend. I'm not trying to push an agenda. I highly recommend that you check out Legion M as a fan.
She's pushing it. It's great. Thank you.
All right, guys. Love to everyone.